and I'm going to do a get off my lawn moment to the bracketologists like Jerry Palm and other people. Kennetra, we know, everyone has said, Andy, you as well, Cole Sports, All Matt, Tony, and everybody. The Big 12 is the best conference in men's basketball. No question. Everybody in the Big 12 is a quad one, quad two win, on and on and on and on and on, right? We all get there. But no one talks about the non-conference strength of schedule for these Big 12 schools. And now we're going to get to my discussion. The Houston Cougars, the number one team ranked in the net, Ken Palm metrics, their strength of schedule non-conference is 62. Okay? Non-conference strength of schedule, 62. Kennetra, how many of the 10 teams in the Big 12 have a non-conference strength of schedule better than 62?
I don't know.
Give me a number.
I'd say 5.
Andy.
Yeah, I'd probably stick around 5.
Okay. I'm glad y'all said that. Count what I say schools better than 62. Kansas, 18. Texas, 120. Baylor, 45. Iowa State, 105. K-State, 297. West Virginia, 84. TCU, 262. Oklahoma State, 191. Texas Tech, 316. And Oklahoma, 81.
2?
Thank you. 2.
2.
Yet, up until a few weeks ago, before K-State went on the losing skid, they were being considered as a 1 seed, despite having a non-conference strength of schedule of almost 300. I have a massive problem with that. It's as if some bracketologists forgot basketball began in November or December. It only started in the Big 12. Oh, well, you played the whole conference schedule in the Big 12. Okay, let's forget about everything else. Not 297. And they're being considered for a 1 seed. Give me a break.
Well, they weren't considered a 1 seed in November. They weren't considered a 1. When were they considered a 1 seed? Based on what?
But it's the body of work.
No.
Based on who they beat.
Were they considered a 1 seed in November or December?
Of course not.
No, they weren't.
They were considered
They were only considered a 1 seed once what happened? Once Big 12 conference play started and they started beating teams. That's when they earned their projection.
But my issue is, and the committee does this, as in the basketball selection committee, they weigh the body of work. That's what they say.
It also has to pass the eye test of what you did most recently. They evaluate you differently on what you did in February and March than what you did in November.
The bracketologists do, not the committee. The committee doesn't. That's different. And I'm going to say that because Jerry Palm and I are the only 2 people media-wise in all of college sports who have participated in the mock selection for men's hoops and women's hoops. So Jerry Palm, we were across the table from each other at the mock selection for men's basketball. So he should know better and include and count non-conference strength of schedule. Hell, he bumped Texas over the Cougs, despite the Longhorns' non-conference strength of schedule being worse than the 120 is worse than 62. Okay? And hey, I know it's going to be a moot point because come July 1st, the Cougs will be in the Big 12. But my point is, the system is weighted so much. If you're not in the Power 5, it doesn't matter what you do in conference play, because it's not in the Big 12. You're not in the best conference in basketball. You're not going to get a lot of chances of quadrant 1 or quadrant 2 wins. So that's my issue. How are you going to penalize teams for not being in the Big 12? It's not their fault.
So you're saying that your non-conference schedule should hold the same weight as your conference schedule?
It needs to matter in the discussion. It has to matter because it's the body of work.
Okay.
That's what they say.
Right. It can matter, but how much should it matter? 50%? Should it be the same?
Well, that's up to whoever is making the decision.
These teams that you play once should hold the same gravity as the teams you play twice?
In some cases, because if I could go in the case, Andy, Kennetra, very few teams, I think Arizona, Alabama, have as good a non-conference win as Houston does at Virginia. I don't think anybody in Big 12, maybe Texas and KU, Baylor probably. That's it. Not K-State. Houston beat St. Mary's neutral site. St. Mary's top 15 net. Houston beat Kent State. Excuse me, Oral Roberts, both of them. Oral Roberts and Kent State. Both of them. Kent State like 35. Or excuse me, Oral Roberts 35. And you were there. The Cougs beat Oral Roberts by like almost 40.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's all part of non-conference schedule. It's not any team. It's not Team A's fault they're not in the Big 12 or the ACC. They schedule that's what they're supposed to do. Schedule tougher non-conference because they know the conference that they're in is not the Big 12.
But at the same time, some of the Power 5 schools, they have to schedule games against mid-majors or non-Power 5 conference schools to benefit those schools, those programs, those athletic departments. Those are buy games. So you kind of do a solid so that you can fund so that whomever, whatever HBCU you want to pick or whatever, Elon, if you will, so you help them out. So it's kind of, it's a detriment to your strength of schedule, but you're kind of a top dog until you play those games. But at the same time, so do you penalize Kansas for winning at Kentucky? I mean, that's a great non-conference game
for sure
on the road. It's not even a neutral site game.
Correct.
So like it's kind of hard to give a lot of support to your argument. I'm not saying it's not valid, but
no. I don't have an issue with anybody who has a net non-conference strength schedule better than Houston. KU and Baylor have that. So I'm okay with them being considered for a 1C because that overall body of work is equal or if not better than Houston. But for the Longhorns and Kansas State, 120 and 295. No way.
So that's fine. You could be better than another team for one night. Great. Applaud. Wonderful. But if you have sustained success over the course of 3 months, I think that means more than being better than for one night.
And then my counter to that, Andy, the Houston Cougars have been ranked top 5 all year.
Probably might be number 1 next week again.
If they win Thursday and Sunday, that's what they have to do.
Right.
But we're seeing one of the issues, and I go back to what Bob Huggins said. Bob Huggins, he's more and more, well, the Big 12 is so tough. Huggy said, why do we even have a conference challenge? Now, why should we have a Big 12 SEC challenge? We should have that because our conference is so tough. So Huggy's going the route of scheduling weaker and weaker non-conference. I don't want that. I don't want that to be awarded for a 1C. Baylor had no problem scheduling tough non-conference schedule. If you're great all year. You're not just great come conference play. KU schedules not tough non-conference. I salute those teams. And you can also mix, heck, the Cougs played like what, Andy, 4 to 5 SWAC schools or, bottom tier programs, teams with net rankings of above 200.
Yep.
We thought that's too many. But they won at Virginia. They beat Kent State. They had neutral site over St. Mary's. All those teams did well this year. And that's why one reason why their net is 1 and their non-conference is as 62, considering 5, 16, but 2 SWACs, a MEAC, a MEAC school. So they still have a strength of schedule better than K-State, Texas, and everybody in the Big 12, not Kansas and Baylor. Gonzaga has had to do this. If you're not a power program, you have to schedule tougher non-conference. But when it comes to games that you don't play in your conference, if you don't schedule, okay, you have no control over your schedule in conference. That's a league office. At some point, you're penalizing the teams for not being in the Big 12, or not being in the Big East, or not being in the ACC, whatever team happens to be the best conference that year. The last few years, it's been the Big 12. And like I said, for the Cougs going forward, it won't be an issue for them. But Oral Roberts, because they're not in the Power 5 conference, almost every win they get in conference hurts them because their conference is not a Power 5 conference. That's not fair. Reality?
I mean,
sure, it's reality. Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say you can make the same argument for Houston and what we've seen the past 2 weeks when Purdue lost. And even though they lost as the number one team in the country, they stayed ranked number one because, I mean, granted, if Houston was in one of those Power 5 conferences, that wouldn't have been the case. The same thing this past week when Alabama leapfrogged Houston out. The Crimson Tide, they had the advantage that they had the head-to-head victory over Houston. But still, I feel like if Houston was a part of one of those Power 5 conference schools, you wouldn't see that hesitant of the voters putting Houston as a number one team. And like you said, if Houston were to, they have 6 regular season games remaining. And quite frankly, besides the Memphis games, and I think even if they lose Sunday at home to Memphis, that would be considered as, it wouldn't be the best loss from a national perspective. But Houston doesn't have the luxury to be able to have a bad outing and say lose to, today they're on the road to SMU. They have to play East Carolina on the road. They play Tulane at home. So they have to pretty much dominate. And even though they dominate the American Athletic Conference, that still detracts from the conference in and of itself because they say, see, it's just Houston, and then they're head and shoulders above everyone else. Or if they lose, and they're like, really? You lost to that team? Or when they lost to Temple at home.